Hello and welcome to today's video. This is a really exciting one. So I'm pre-filming this, but if I've calculated correctly, when this is going out it is 4 days until my 25th birthday, which feels crazy. But I thought it'd be a really cool time to make a list of books that I want to read before I'm 30. I figured that gives me 5 years. I should be able to do it. So yeah, this is 30 books I want to read before I'm 30. And I've split these up into different categories and I've chosen for different reasons. I'm not going to go super in depth into like what each individual book is, but I'm going to go into depth as like why I've picked this book basically. And it might be a short explanation, it might be a long one. We're just going to go with it and hope and see how it goes, and hopefully it should be fun, and I'm really excited for this, so yeah. And 30 books divided by 5 years is 6 books a year, which is one of these books every other month. So should be doable, should be cool, but let's get into it. So first category that I'm going to go through are classics. I've been trying to expand my classics range and get into them a bit more, but I'm not doing that great at it. But there are some classics that I really feel like I should read. So the first one, starting strong, is Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. You know, just a casual like 1400 pages. So yeah, starting strong, we've got this one. This is a big beefy boy. I don't know how much to say about this. It's meant to be like one of the classics. You need to read, one of the like must read classics, and that is great, but it is so big and I've heard it's very dense, so I really want to read it. I want to see the hype, I want to see what it's about, I want to be able to have my own opinion on it, but it's this big, so this might be one that I'll put off a little bit longer, but I will get to it. I am confident I will get to this within the next 5 years. Book 2 is William Golding, Lord of the Flies. Now I don't know if this is actually classed as a classic, but I personally view it as one. And the main reason for picking this one is I actually got given this in year 9 or 10 when I was at school. So how old would I have been? Like 14, 15? I think that's about the right age. And I was given this from someone whose son had annotated it. So yeah, and she gave me this, and it's got all the annotations in it. It's like got the whole story. It's got loads of interesting writing in it. And then my English class did not study this one. Every other English class in my year studied Lord of the Flies, but mine did not. We picked well, the teacher picked a different book, so I never read it, and I've had it all this time, and I really feel like I should read it. Like, I've heard a lot of good things. It's been spoilt for me. Every other class was reading it, which means all my friends were reading it, so I do know the major twists, but I really want to read it, to be honest. Like, I don't really have any other reason except literally it's probably one of the few books that everyone else I know has read and I haven't, and it's got annotations in. I love reading books with annotations, especially when it's from like someone you know. It's just so interesting to me. Like, there's so many like annotations even like on the contents page of like where the different characters appear. There's just loads. I'm really excited about this one and think it should be good fun. Book number 3 is Rebecca. So this is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I think that's how you pronounce the name. And again, this is just one of those classics that I'm honestly shocked I haven't read by now. It's just a common classic. I know that all classics are common, like you probably know the names of most of them, but there's just some that have always like stood out more to me than others, and this is one of them. And about 6 months ago now, I found this copy of it in a charity shop. £2 I paid for this. Can we just appreciate that, because I paid £2 for this absolutely gorgeous copy. So very exciting, and I want to read it, so within the next 5 years I will have read it. Number 4 is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. And this again is a classic that I've heard a lot about, but this is before even, I think there's like a TV show out now, or maybe it's a movie. Before even that came out, I've had this recommended to me by a few different people for so many years. I will get around to it. I'm determined. These people probably told me when I was like 16, 17, 18 to read this book. By the time I'm 30, I will have done it. Book number 5 is The Grimm's Fairy Tales, and this is by Brothers Grimm. And what I believe this one is like the origin and the original fairy tales as they're meant to be. Yeah, so I feel like this is pretty traditional, but obviously it'll depend on each one, and it'll be a new take on common fairy tales. And it looks like there's loads in here. There's like, I'm not going to count them right now, but there's like 3 pages full of content, so quite a few to go through, and I'm excited about this one. I love like spookier, gorier fairy tale versions of things, so this sounds like good fun. Number 6 is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Again, I recently found this really gorgeous copy in a charity shop. I can't actually remember how much I paid for this one, but I think it was literally like a few pence. But yeah, Great Expectations, just another classic, and one that I feel like has come up more than others. There's loads of classics and even like loads of Charles Dickens classics, but this is just the one that's always stood out. And I found this copy of it, so it just seems like it's telling me to read it, you know? Like, I want to read this, I want to get through it. And it looks super small as well, so it really shouldn't take that long, so fingers crossed. Number 7 is Dracula. I want to get to this one. I have a real hope that I'm going to get to this one. It's the original Dracula story, it's the original vampire story. I want to know it and have my own opinion on it and be able to relate it when I'm reading more up-to-date books. But I've attempted to start reading this a couple of times, not within the last 5 years. So I'm hoping that, like, as I've matured, my ability to read a more difficult writing style, or at least that's what I remember I didn't like reading it, has also developed. But I've tried to read it a couple of times when I was younger and struggled and not got through it, so I think I've only ever got a few chapters in, but this is one I would love to pick up. And then number 8 I actually don't own yet, but on the same kind of, Dracula is the original vampire, Frankenstein is the original like monster's tale, although Frankenstein's the inventor, it's Frankenstein's monster. So I would love to read Frankenstein. I think it's really cool, and I've never read the story, and I don't believe that I've ever seen an adaptation of it all the way through. So my hope would be that I can do that, like, for the first time reading it, which is my preferred method of like consuming content, is to read. So even though it's such a classic, I've never known the full thing. I don't know any details. Like, I know the basic story, but yeah, I would love to read it and love to have that first time without being spoiled be reading. So yeah, that's why I chose that one. So the next section is kind of like classic fantasy, and I mean, I might as well just show them. It's classic fantasy. The Hobbit is book 9 on my list, so yeah, The Hobbit, never read it. This is J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm sure you know the story. I don't. I've wanted to read it for a while, and because I've known I've wanted to read it, I've never watched the film version of it, so I don't really know the story of The Hobbit. I have watched the Lord of the Rings films, so I know the world, but yeah, it's a classic fantasy, and I don't know if it's the main genre that I read anymore, but it's probably my favourite genre to get like deep dived into and like have the whole world and get really into it and into the narrative and into the world of it, so I should have read this. Now I'm going to do books 10, 11 and 12 all together now, and this might be controversial because this is the Lord of the Rings, which I know technically, like this version I've got, is one book, but they have since been split up into 3 books. The 3 books are The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers and The Return of the King. But I'm classing it as 3 books because I don't hate myself and I actually want to read this. This is almost as many pages as War and Peace put together, and it's a much like bigger book but much smaller writing. So yeah, I really want to get to this. I really want to read this. I haven't watched the films in more than 10 years, I'd say. I haven't watched the films in my adult life, so I don't really remember that much about it, and I really want to read the book. I've literally owned this since I was about 13. I need to read it. And yeah, I'm classing it as 3 books just because then I can actually get through them, hopefully. Next, we're going into kind of like a sci-fi genre of books, and there's only 2 in this genre that I've picked for here. So book 13 is Dune, and I do believe there's like a whole series, but I'm just interested in the first book for now. It's one of those sci-fi books that I've heard loads and loads about, but don't actually know anything substantial about, so I should really feel like I should read it. It's one of those books that just like, as a lover of the genre, I feel like I should read, and if I do enjoy it, which, you know, fingers crossed I do, there's a whole world to explore even further than the original book. And then book 14 is Brave New World. This is again just a really common sci-fi book, and one that I see all the time, and lately I think it's had like a cover redesign maybe. It might not have, but I've basically been seeing it in a lot of bookshops lately. Like, I think every time I've been to Waterstones in the last year, it's been pretty front and centre. So it's calling out to me, and I'm going to listen to that. So the next section is kind of like a group of books that I've grouped together because other people that I've seen do this, similar to this, like on booktube, and just trying to read certain books and wanting to read like certain books before you die or before a certain age is quite a popular thing. These books will more than likely have popped up on a few of these lists. So book number 15 is 1984 by George Orwell. I want to read this book. It sounds so interesting, and I want to get more into George Orwell's writing as well. I've read George Orwell's Notes on Nationalism and found it really interesting, but that was like literally like a 50-page little book that he'd wrote. So, you know, it's not the same as a full novel, which is what George Orwell is known for. If I don't enjoy it, I won't read it. Like, I'm not going to force myself to read these. If I start reading them and I hate them, like, but this is one I would really genuinely like to read. Number 16 is The Book Thief. And I don't think that this is a classic, but I think it's a very big, well-known book that has been around a long time. So it was originally published in 2007, so definitely not a classic, but for some reason it feels like it is. Everything I know about this book, and every time I hear it mentioned, I feel like it's quite common to see it mentioned in videos, and, you know, there are people still reading this now. It's not like I never see it. Every time it is mentioned, I'm like, I want to read that. It sounds amazing. My basic knowledge of it is there's a little girl who loves reading, and when people are destroying books and getting rid of books in a war, she's like, no, like, I need to save these books, and start stealing loads of books to save them from being destroyed. And I do believe that it's based around Nazi Germany, and her parents are trying to like help Jews, I believe. I'm not sure where I've heard that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I've heard. So yeah, really excited about this one. I think it should be really good. And then the other book in this section is The Colour Purple by Alice Walker. I believe that it's about like female friendship and female love when the world has a lot of male violence in it. I don't want to look too much into it because I don't want to spoil it, and I know because it's so old it's so easy to like spoil books accidentally. But yeah, The Colour Purple by Alice Walker is another one that I would love to read. So the next kind of little category is children / middle grade books. I don't know exactly where these ones fall, so I just thought I'd keep that bracket open. And yeah, so book 18 is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, and this is a classic. I've seen lots of adaptations of Alice in Wonderland. There's quite a few movies out. I think there's probably a new movie made about every 10 years of this, so I am aware of the story, but I've never read it and I would like to. And then the other book in this section is Howl's Moving Castle. This is about Howl's Moving Castle. Yeah, basically my knowledge of the book is there's a person called Howl, and they have a castle that is able to move. I've seen pictures of this castle like depicted online before where it literally has legs and walks. I don't know if that's just someone's like fan art or if that's actually like how it's described or what. But I'm really excited to read this. A lot of people highly rate this book. It is a well-loved book and I never read it as a child and I haven't read it since, so it's one that I feel like I've missed out on and would really like to read. Now, the next category is a little bit broad, but it's basically books that I've owned for way too long and really should have read by now. So we've got Occupy by Noam Chomsky. Basically, I've had it years and I've really wanted to read it and I haven't. So I'm going to. I actually have started this book. I'm going to restart it when I decide to read it. This used to be my bus book that I'd just keep it in my bag, read 5 to 10 pages and keep it for the next time. And then in like, I can't remember what time it was, like April 2019, somewhere in that time, stopped needing to get the bus to work and this sat in the bottom of my bag for many months. In fact, I don't think it was till about 6 months later when I went back to work that I realised this was still in there and half read. I think literally half read. I'm on page 50 and there's like 120 pages. So I need to restart this and read it at some point. I'm really excited about it. I mean, it's Noam Chomsky, it's Occupy, it's, yeah. And then the other book in this category is Ready Player One. I should have read this by now. I've owned this a long time. I brought it because I wanted to read it. I can't even tell you how long ago I brought it. This was on my shelves when I had my original bookshelves, like when I was reading as a teenager, and I haven't read it. Ready Player One is, I believe it's a video game. Maybe this should have been in the science fiction section. I don't know. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the basics of this is there's a game that you can play. If you keep finding the secrets of the game, you can go like, I don't know if it's levels or what, but basically there's a way you could win the game, and if you win the game, like, you win everything surrounding it and to do with it. Again, I'm sure I read the whole description and got into it at some point, but that is the basics of it, and I'm sure most people have already read this one. It really is, I don't know if it's classed as a classic, if it's sci-fi, it's just a book that I've owned for ages. Next section, a world that I just really want to get into. And I'm going to do these books together, so this is books 22, 23 and 24, however I only own 2 of them. So I really want to get into the Mistborn world and like the Brandon Sanderson world. So Mistborn 1, The Final Empire, Mistborn 2, which I don't currently own, and Mistborn 3, The Hero of Ages. So all 3 books. I know there's only 2 here. I want to read all 3, obviously. I really want to get into this world. I want to know what it's about. I want to learn about it. I know that it's got to do with magic, where you absorb metal into your body to have these magic powers. It sounds really cool. Every time I hear someone speak about this, I'm like, why the hell am I not reading this yet? But every time I still don't pick it up. So this is the kick in the butt to actually pick it up. And then the next set of books are books that I've heard a lot about, I'm interested in, but I know very little about, but want to. Basically, I don't know what section to put these in. They're books I want to read, but they're not necessarily books that I've gone out of my way to read. There's only one of them I own, and I only got that 2 months ago because it was in a charity shop. So yeah, let's just get it started and go. So book 25 is The Marvels, and this is one that just looks so interesting, and the book itself is so pretty. Basically, I think it's something like the first half of the book is just like a picture book. It's just like, I don't think it's classed as a graphic novel, but it could be. But yeah, it's basically just pictures for the whole first half telling the first part of the story, and then it flicks into like writing and normal like text for the second half of this book and like the second half of the story. I just think that sounds so interesting. Like, I've never heard of anything like that before, so it's something I'm interested in. It's something I'd like to read. I will read it in the next 5 years. Then book 26, the next book is 1000 Paper Cranes. And this is basically to do with like the myth that if you fold 1000 paper cranes, I'm not sure if it's like you get good luck or you get a wish, but it's basically a very traditional folklore and stuff like that about like paper cranes and their significance and stuff. So essentially I don't want to read any more into it because I already only read a line and feel like I know too much, so I'm leaving it alone. Then book 27 is Wreck of the Titan. Now this is a bit of a weird one, but honestly it just really piques my interest. It is basically a book written about the first cruise ship that goes out, hits an iceberg and sinks. It was written before the Titanic happened, like in real life. And apparently there's a lot of similarities, and it's very weird and very creepy how many similarities there are, but it's not meant to be. Like, it wasn't written to be weird and creepy, it's written as a book just to be a book. So I don't know, it just really piques my interest. It was written before the Titanic, but there's so many similarities between what happened in the book and what happened with the Titanic. Kind of feels like something else is going on there, but obviously that's all just like theory and speculation. I'm sure there isn't actually, it's just a weird coincidence, but I like that. I like to think about that, so that's what we're gonna do. 28 is another beefy one, and this is House of Leaves. And I think this is a commitment, 1, because of the size, 2, because of the content, and 3, because I've heard from a lot of people that you need to read it a couple of times, and there's a few different ways to read it, and sometimes you need to read it a couple of different ways to fully get into it. It's been really popular probably this last year, honestly. I don't know when it came out, but like this last year I've seen it around a lot. I've seen a lot of people on booktube read it, and it really appeals to me, but I don't want to read it right now. There's too much hype around it right now for me to just be able to casually read it. So within the next 5 years I'm going to read it, and I'm going to have an opinion on it and have a deep dive and figure out if I even have the ability to read a book that's structured the way it is and that has so many layers and so many levels in it. I don't know, but I'm really intrigued, and apparently it's really spooky as well and really like weird, and that seems like my vibe. I want to give it a try. Fingers crossed I like it. And then book 29 we have Cloud Atlas. This I know very little about. I think a film came out, Cloud Atlas, when I'm really guessing here, but I'm guessing like 12 or 13. I watched the film, remember really enjoying it, can't remember a thing about it. Learned it was a book, and it was all based on a book, and the book is very interesting and weird and creepy. 6 Interlocking Lives, One Amazing Adventure. I don't want to read anymore. I don't like reading the back. I don't like knowing too much about what I'm going into, but yeah, that is another one I want to read. And then there's one book left, book 30 on this list, and there are a few books that I was umming and ahhing about and wasn't sure if I wanted to include. And then I decided I'd do something a little bit more fun. And in the comments, tell me what book I should have read. Is there a book that you've read, that you've heard of, anything like that, that you think I need to get to? I need to read this book. Obviously there's quite a lot of books here, and there might not be a book that you think needs to be added to this. I don't know. But my thought essentially was that the 30th book can be picked from the comments of this video, because I couldn't definitively decide on one book. There's a few that almost made it, but none of them were at the same level as any of this. So why not just read a book that's recommended to me by someone who was interested enough to watch this video? So comment down below what other book I need to read before I'm 30. It's that simple. I don't know how I'm going to pick this yet, but that's that. So yeah, I really hope that you've enjoyed the video. It's a lot of fun to like pick these out, and it actually gave me the kick up the bum to pick these out because I wanted to film this. So yeah, if you did like it, please do give it a like. Subscribe down below if you want to see more and more content like this, more bookish content, anything like that, just let me know. And yeah, hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.